Hi everybody, today I thought I'd show you how I set about making a very straightforward Christmas shadow box card, which actually looks very pretty despite the numerous mistakes I made. And I thought it might be helpful to take you through what I did and how I managed to rectify all the basic errors that I made and come up with something that I hope you agree looks very pretty and effective, both in terms as a Christmas card for somebody, but also as a decoration that can stand in your home. I started well using A4 white card, cutting it to 23 centimetres by 15 to enable it to go through my Big Shot machine, and then I scored 1 centimetre from both ends, which I was ultimately going to make value folds, and then I scored another line 3 centimetres from those 1 centimetre score lines, which would act as the depth of the shadow box and again would be value folds. I needed to make sure 15 centimetres would go through my Big Shot machine, and as I was cutting out a 6 centimetre circle to put vellum across. And my first mistake came because I did a watercolour background, and actually I'm very much a beginner at watercolours, and what I failed to do was put enough water on the card to enable it to blend really well, and so what came up was rather blotchy. And instead of thinking that maybe I should start again, I thought I could use it, and I cut out a 6 centimetre hole that matched the one in my background paper, but as you can see it is not the best. I then cut out a slightly wider vellum circle of 7 centimetres, which I was going to stick behind the watercolour, between the watercolour and the background. I then cut out Father Christmas and an extra reindeer from this pretty little die that I got, and that worked fine. So this is the mock-up of what the background was going to look like, and obviously I was going to have to stick that watercolour in place on that white background card. My next mistake was when I did the background scene, which is using that lovely Holtz Treeline die, but I needed a canopy, and instead of using the one that I was going to use for the front piece, I decided I would try with other dies, and I failed, ended up using scissors and really sort of massacred the shape. I could have scrapped it but decided to persevere, and this is what it looks like, so a rather scrappy result, but I worked on the principle it would be hidden behind the front one, so I carried on doing what I was doing. I perpetuated my mistake and did it exactly the same again, trying to match up the canopy that I'd got with the Treeline die with this village die, and in fact I think I made it even worse, and taking scissors to it just meant that I had an even tattier canopy, but I cut it away so that it was even more hidden than that first one would be. And then when you lay it in place on my mock-up, this is what it's going to look like. So not exactly aesthetically pleasing, and that's the point I realised, that I hadn't allowed for any score lines on those front pieces either, so that was another mistake number 4. To rectify that, I cut out strips 15 centimetres long by 2 centimetres wide and scored them down the middle and folded them in half, and that was going to make brackets that I could stick onto my shadow box sides to hold those panels in place, and that's what I did. Now in fact there's an advantage to that. I stuck them at 1 centimetres from the background, which was now stuck in place, and it allowed a nice frame to put my first scene on and stick it, and gave me a little bit more flexibility than if I'd scored the lines on the side of the panels. I then stuck the second one in place, again 1 centimetre from the first one, and once again that allows me a little bit of laxity when it comes to sticking the panels on. So I had them nice and straight, because sometimes when I folded up the sides the inner panels can bow a bit, but that didn't happen there. It did mean that the top end for the frontispiece was slightly wider than the 15 centimetres I'd set out to do, but that's compensated by taking a 19 centimetre piece of card, cutting it to 15 centimetres tall, and cutting out that lovely canopy with the snowflakes into it, and this was perfect, and I should have used it partially die cut on the inner panels as well, and I will not make that same mistake again twice. My next mistake comes up because I decided that the plain paper needed a bit of embellishment, and I thought I'd emboss some snowflakes into it, which worked abysmally and actually just made it look rather tatty. And so I was going to have to sort that one out as well, otherwise it was going to look very amateurish and not very good. So that was easy to sort. I cut 2 strips 15 centimetres or 15.2 centimetres long, so slightly taller than the card, 3 centimetres wide, and scored them at centimetre intervals purely for decorative effect. And I cut out a tree from that Holtz Treeline die, which I could again cut into pieces to decorate the front, and so I was able to cover up the mistakes I'd made. The net result was something that actually looked really rather streamlined and quite good, and I was quite pleased with how it had gone. I did think it needed a little bit more embellishment, so I cut out some snowflakes using various dies and some stars from one of my canopy dies that I'd got from watercolour paper that matched the background, and put them on the front, and I was actually quite pleased with what I'd managed to achieve despite all the errors. And this was the net result, which I think would grace anybody's mantelpiece, either as a Christmas card or a decoration. And the great thing about having the vellum in the back is it lets the daylight through, which is lovely and effective, and shows up the Father Christmas flying through the sky in the daytime. And then at night all you need to do is pop an LED tea light behind the card, and you get a lovely silhouette effect, which I always enjoy because I think it really brightens up those dark winter evenings leading up to Christmas. So all's well that ended well, but I hope that you take heart from your projects and realise that with a little bit of lateral thinking you can correct almost anything and end up with something to be proud of. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope it inspires you to do better than me.